Welcome to our weekly English program, Inside Rojava. The YPG liberated many areas in Kobani this week from ISIS gangs. Our Ronahî TV reporter Parwar Muhammad Ali was there to give us the latest in the following report.
We are now in the southern entrance of Kobani. YPG could liberate this area, including the many areas that have been liberated by YPG fighters. Behind me just is a tank for ISIS destroyed by YPG. So during the military operations that carried out by YPG yesterday night, they could destroy 3 tanks of ISIS and push back them out of Kobani. This is the National Hospital of Kobani. Just yesterday, it was liberated yesterday night. ISIS was controlling over this building, this hospital, and now it is free fully. So now we are heading to Mishanur Hill. This hill just liberated, a couple of days ago. Now we are heading to this strategic mound, which overlooks on many neighborhoods and maybe entire Kobani. So let's go. So now we can see this Humvee for ISIS was seized a couple of days ago from ISIL, and now YPG fighters are using this Humvee against them closest to Mishanur Mound. You could see. We are now on Mishanur Hill. This hill is strategic because it overlooks on entire city of Kobani. After liberating many areas inside Kobani, like Rush School, now we are on Mishanur Hill, which was liberated by YPG and YPJ. As I told you, this hill is strategic because it overlooks over all the city of Kobani and overlooks over Maktalin neighborhood and Kania Kordan neighborhood, which is controlled by ISIL now. So, by liberating Mishanur, we can say the liberation of entire city is a matter of time.
We also asked some YPG and TPG fighters about the newly liberated areas in Kobani. This is what they had to say.
ومالباطي كردستاني را مالباطي كوباني را دوني ساعات حملة كر ساعات شوري عصر ما دست بيكر حيا ساعات بينج ما دي يعني بينج متري بيتر ان بينج دهاتن وطانجا كالفرا تطانج سي طانجن نجوانا بر نجاني قرت ما خستي قرت يعني بري امين دي راح بيبون تشكي بينج ده فاقريان بينج متري قيش سلاحي خود شاكر المروفيون
أبرسونا ما برسر كتبوا هم أفتحها حمود تدستي هوالا دانا ما قرتم أفتحها جي أفتحش بونا ما برسر تجيب بون چونكو ما بقر حكمية ما سر كوباني حمود شد به هم رياح لنجي وشيراني واند كابر قنطرة ما حمود دستي هوالا دانا جنازي واند دستي واند سلاحي واند جاباني واند دستي ما برج سلاحي وجاباني واند قرتم حمود هو دستي واند دانا وبمد حمود سدسمه
أفتحها چما استراتژیکه مثلا دست پیگا کوبانه دام ایرش کرد یعنی تپه دهاتن جبوی گودام تپه بخن یعنی حاکمیت ها سر باجر چید و جبوی و دست بگی ایرش تپه کرن مجی چگیر ما دست بگی تپه کرد جبوی گوام سر همین ملی حاکم بن مثلا جیگو ترک تشتا دادن داعشه او رک همین دست مدنه جبوی وجی ما تپه گرتی سر هر 4 ملا یعنی هر 4 پارچه کردستان هم حاکمن یعنی طایبه سر باجر نو همی بن دانت ما مده هم همی داره دبینه جبوی وجی جبوی ما مشتنور گرینگه.
Let's go now to Stockholm to the Swedish journalist JOAKIM MEDIN to get his views on the Kobani resistance. JOAKIM MEDIN will also inform us on a conference on Rojava, which will take place in Stockholm on 15th of February. Welcome, JOAKIM, to our program. You witnessed the latest Kobani resistance and you met many YPG and TPG fighters who some of them lost their lives while fighting ISIS. How would you describe the YPG and TPG fighters in Kobani, and how has their resistance affected you?
It is true. I mean, I met a lot of people who, both when I went to Kobani in September, October, and now in December, that are no longer with us. And I mean, I would describe them as, I mean, we both have locals fighting for their hometown, and also a lot of volunteers who came to fight from North Kurdistan and even from Turkey. And I mean, most of them are just normal people that is either lived in the city, or I met several people who used to study at some university. They were workers. That's what they are made up of, what I felt.
The left. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that I, as many others, have seen how they have been able to successfully resist when a lot of other peoples and cities have not been able to do this, and how they have showed great inner strength that that must come from something. The difference is maybe that I have seen this already before Kobani.
JOAKIM, let's move to something else. The Leftist International Forum, in cooperation with the Workers' Educational Association, will organize a conference on Rojava in Sweden on 15th of February. Tell us please more about it. What is the aim of the conference and who will attend it?
The aim of the conference is to focus on the present situation of Rojava, what we can predict of the future of the three cantons, also to deal with future cooperations between the cantons and the surrounding world, really, and how obviously people can support this project. And people who will attend, I mean, the organizers invited a number of people to represent all three cantons and also different political movements inside the cantons. And I think they hope for, you know, both progressives, I mean leftist people to attend, but also a lot of other peoples, due to the fact that the interest has been growing in all of Sweden. You know, for example, when Salih Muslim came to visit in November in Stockholm, he told me that the number of parties in the parliament that came to see him was, you know, more parties and a much bigger interest now than a year ago.
JOAKIM, maybe the most important point of discussions for the people of Rojava will be the future collaboration between Rojava and others in the West. From your point of view, how could this collaboration be formulated?
That's true. I mean, that's a really important discussion, and I think that you know, at some point, I think the Western countries are going to have to realize that they are going to have to choose between supporting the Assad regime or ISIS or Rojava, because the so-called Free Syrian Army, these number of different factions, they are becoming weaker by the day. How to do this, however, I mean, I think they could be able to discuss, you know, both support with weapons and also the fact that Kobani has to be rebuilt, and the people now in North Kurdistan has to relocate themselves to this area.
Based on your own observations on Rojava, to what extent can the left wing in the West draw lessons from the Rojava model, JOAKIM?
Well, a lot of leftist movements in the West world has not got a system of co-presidency, for example, and I think this is something that can inspire a lot of movements. Also, there is there's really no consensus in the leftist and progressive movements in the West on what is the best. Is it a nation state, or is it something more autonomous, like Rojava? There's no consensus in this. I think this will contribute to a lot of discussion, which is good. Also, I think the model of Rojava has been able to put a lot more attention and focus to the Kurds. And the Kurds have been neglected by many people in the progressive and democratic movements in the West. They've been able to focus on a lot of people in the developing world, but not in the Kurds. There's been a lot of people also, when I've been giving talks about Rojava, they've been activists for many years, and they keep telling me how we have no idea of the example of Rojava or the struggle of the Kurds in Syria. So I think it can inspire a lot of more focus on the Middle East also.
JOAKIM MEDIN, the freelance journalist, you've been with us from Sweden. Thank you very much for speaking to us on Ronahî.
Thank you.
An American citizen's codenamed Shervan America traveled to Rojava to support the people of Rojava in their fight against ISIS. Shervan spoke to Hawar news agency about the YPG forces and their fight against ISIS.
Navemen Shervan is Amerikim, New York City, Bajar, New York City. Gel Amerika, ji dikhwaz azadi, ji zaf hazdike. Azadi jian, azadi zman, azadi dini, azadi jin. This is my new family. YPG and YPG are a very small force, but very fierce force and very effective in protecting these lands. I've learned in the past 3 months their way of life, their ideology, their tactics, and the way they treat everyone like family. It's an outstanding fighting force, and beyond that, they still need help. They still need tactical help. Okay, despicire navber serekani utamar shardike peshra navber kamishlo u telhamis Abu Gasaif I unahaver ver khasake. YPG and YPG need help, not so much in the form of warriors coming here and joining and fighters. They need more help in the area of technology, and they also need more help in the area of media. So any kind of positive media they can get that can spread their word even more. Kobani and Shingal is getting a lot of exposure, media exposure. However, in between, this whole area, which is Jazeera Canton, is not getting the exposure it should. It's vital. Why? Because it connects Kobani to Shingal. If we're able to push all the way down and cut off their logistics road, then Kobani and Shingal are separated into different forces, and they'll bring victory faster.
In Shingal, South Kurdistan, the Kurdish joint forces are continuing their operation to liberate Shingal from ISIS gangs, while the people of Shingal, who established on 14th of January, the Assembly of Shingal Yazidis, are continuing to organize themselves.
The People's Defense Forces HPG, the Free Women's Forces Yezhastar, the People's and Women's Protection Units YPG, the Shingal Resistance Unit Yebeshe, and the Peshmerga forces are continuing the operation to liberate Shingal, which started on 18 December. Clashes are still continuing in the city. On the other hand, the Assembly of Shingal Yazidis was founded in Mount Shingal on 14 January. Yazidis decided to establish an assembly in order to counter the lack of unity that led to the massacre perpetrated by ISIS on 3rd of August. Following the establishment of the Assembly of Shingal Yazidis, Basnus, which is being financed by members of the KDP, misquoted the religious leader Bawish Sheikh Khato with the following wrong statement. Basnus quote, "We as the religious council of the Yazidis have never approved the canton and clarified in the past that no other actions than those of the Kurdish authority will be accepted by us." End Basnus quote. On his turn, the Yazidis' religious leader, in a press statement, denied an interview with the Kurdish news agency Basnews. According to the Religious Council of EZEM, the quotes by Basnus about opposing an autonomy in GINGELL were deliberately misquoted and even fabricated.
Mrs. Melanie Gingell, the barrister at DUGHTY Street Chambers, will join us now from the UK to discuss with her how the international legal bodies can be supportive to Rojava. Welcome, Mrs. Gingell, to our program.
Thank you very much.
The people of Rojava are struggling for their basic rights. How can the international legal bodies be supportive to their aspirations, Mrs. Gingell?
Well, everything that's happening in Rojava clearly has to be seen against the background, the incredibly fragile and difficult background across the region. Rojava is not, as you know, a state, an official state per se, but the PYD is exercising de facto control over those three cantons. And in international law, because of that de facto control, they are in a position to have to guarantee basic fundamental rights to the people in the territories which they control. So even though they are not officially a state, the international legal standards do apply. And of course, the social contract that forms the foundation of the legal system within the three cantons specifically overtly states that the International Bill of Rights does apply and forms a fundamental part of the legal system. So that's mainly three documents: the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and thirdly the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So all the rights in those three documents that form the foundation of the United Nations do apply in Rojava.
There are three justice ministries in the three cantons of Rojava. How can these ministries benefit from the Western democratic legal systems, Mrs. Gingell?
Well, broadly speaking, these three ministries, which are based on this concept of democratic confederalism and gender equality, and therefore have, I understand, two ministers at the head of each justice system, a male and a female minister. And broadly speaking, they are guaranteeing the rights that are set out in the social contract. But given the context, the kind of fragility of the context within which they're working, undoubtedly and undeniably there are violations of rights. And that's something that happens in every country across the world. But of course, in Rojava, the circumstances are slightly more extreme than most countries have to deal with. And so, yes, there are violations. So what are the main answers, what are the main remedies that can be brought to bear to ensure that rights can be guaranteed? Well, I think the two interdependent factors are firstly accountability, and secondly the independence of the judiciary. So firstly, talking about accountability, the security services, the civilian security services, the prison services, they need to know that they will be held accountable for any violations, for any violation of good practice. So there needs to be a code of conduct in place which sets out what people can expect from these services that are dealing with them. There needs to be monitoring bodies. There needs to be an independent, and that's fundamental. Any monitoring bodies need to be independent, and they need to be able to conduct a prompt and impartial inquiry into any allegations that the civilian security services or the prison services have violated any of the standards that are in place. And secondly, the interdependent kind of other factor is that the judiciary itself needs to be independent, and that's absolutely fundamental. The judges need to know that their jobs are absolutely secure, for example. You can't have a position where they have short-term contracts and therefore they know that if they make a decision that's unpopular with the political authorities, that they might lose their job. So job security for the judiciary is absolutely fundamental. They need to know that the political reach of the authorities does not extend into the courtroom.
Since the start of the Rojava revolution, Turkey, a NATO member, has committed several human rights violations. Besides supporting gang members who are attacking Rojava and allowing them to cross the border, Turkey is besieging Rojava and has killed many civilians who tried to cross the border. Is there any way to hold Turkey accountable for its violations?
The kind of broader context within which people are having to function within Rojava is clearly affected by, yes, as you say, the wider political and military situation across the region, where, as you say, it seems to be very well documented that jihadi people are crossing the border from Turkey into Syria, and there have been incursions, military incursions across the border. And that's one of the emerging features in the region, these kind of factors which are transcending state borders, the nationalism and the jihadism and the large numbers of refugees and IDPs. So the problems, the kind of cross-border problems are huge, are vast. So what can be done? What are the potential remedies? It seems to me that the most likely, the most realistic remedy is going to be a political one, and we have to try to mobilize the international community to condemn what's happening. That's obviously difficult. What confuses the situation in relation to Rojava is, of course, the wider issues around the PKK and its status in the European Union and in the United States of America. And so therefore the ongoing but very faltering peace process in Turkey between the Turkish government and Abdullah Öcalan, for example, is absolutely critical, because whilst the PKK remains a listed organization, it makes it very difficult for the international community to come on board with the PYD in Rojava and kind of overtly publicly support them. And that really is the starting point, that the EU and the United States need to consider realistically now whether now is the appropriate time to put real consideration into the status of the PKK. I think that's the key starting point.
MELANIE GINGELL, the barrister at DUGHTY Street Jumpers, thanks a lot for speaking to us on Ronahî.
Thank you very much.
Because of the constant threat of ISIS, everybody in Rojava is remaining vigilant. Recently, a group of mothers from Rojava attended a self-defense training provided by the Women's Protection Units, the YPG.
شرط مرجي نها عم تيدا دبي ملتي ما حمي حاضر بي حمي امانات دبي جبو افكاسي داعش يعني حتى دايك حتى ظلام دبي ام حاضر كن ام پرورده بكن پیشارو جيرا ام زانن يعني چواري سريمه ام حاضر دكن وكا شنغالي نوي سريمه هوالي بجي اف دخوازي هش دايكا كرن قلت نمي پرورده بكن دايكا جي قلت ام حاضرن وكا دايك ام حاضرن يعني جبو روجي جران سلمة دورن ام آمده بن ام بزانن سلاح ام حماتا مالا خو بكن ام حماتا حاري خو بكن مالا خطا كري ساجر طبير اسمري مالا.
On 17th of January, the Syrian regime forces launched an attack on Kurdish neighborhoods in Hasakeh, killing several people, including civilians. The forces of the Assad regime bombed 3 Kurdish neighborhoods in Hasakeh with mortars. At least 11 civilians were killed during the shelling. In response, the YPG forces stepped up operations against regime forces in the city after thwarting attacks by Syrian regime troops and captured a military post in the Tel Hajar area after taking the control point at Sabah. Let's move on now to the press review.
The New York Post mentions how, according to an activist group that exposes ISIS atrocities called Raqqa is being slaughtered silently, 13 teenage boys were killed by ISIS for watching a soccer match between Iraq and Jordan for the Asian Cup. Before the kids were killed, their so-called crime was announced over a loudspeaker. Time writes about Americans who have joined the fight against ISIS. Some Americans have joined the YPG despite the fact that they are not actively recruiting foreign fighters. Ahmad Sheikh Hassan, head of the Defense Committee for Kurdish Forces in Rojava, said that arms are more important than fighters. Quote, "What do we need fighters for if we don't have the necessary arms or weapons to give them?" End quote. The Daily Mail published an article of AFP which marks that the Islamic State group has suffered a damaging blow to its ambitions at the hands of Kurdish fighters and US-led warplanes in Kobane. According to analysts, the setback in Kobane has knocked the momentum out of the jihadist advance and dashed their hopes of a swift expansion of their territory. Kurdish affairs analyst Mutlu Civiroglu told AFP, quote, "Kobane has become a huge symbol. Everyone knows Kobane. It's where the Kurds stopped IS. IS lost hundreds of fighters, millions of dollars of weapons, and the image that wherever IS goes, no one can stop them."
Let's go now back to the Hasakeh events. The journalist Abdullah Isa Hasso will join us now from Qamishlo city of Jizir Canton to give us more insight on the latest Syrian regime attacks on Hasakeh. Welcome, Abdullah, to our program. Give us, please, a sense on why the Syrian regime attacked Hasakeh city.
Welcome to you too.
Welcome, Abdullah. Go ahead.
Yes, now it's clear that the clashes which erupted in the early hours of last Saturday were continuing for 4 days between the Kurdish forces and the regime forces in the Hasakeh countryside and inside Hasakeh too. We know that it's clear that Kurds have worked since 3 years to build an autonomous local government in the 3 regions, cantons of Jazeera and Kobane and Afrin. But maybe this action by the Kurdish side or the components in the area like Kurds and other component ethnic groups doesn't like the government situation like this. But when the clashes started, the Syrian army shelled 3 Kurdish majority areas on the edge of Hasakeh city, and the fighters of YPG and the Asaish were obliged to stand against this shells by the government or the Syrian troops there. Now the situation is, we have many worries about the calmness in the city, but it's clear that the government is going to continue this strategy against Kurds there. But we've got many information that figure points about these clashes, that after the ISIS or the Daesh lost its power in many areas inside Syria, nearby Hasakeh and in GINGELL and also in Kobane, maybe that the government doesn't like such situation that the Kurdish people or the Kurdish forces to make such progress on the land. And the others, yes.
Thank you very much, the journalist Abdullah Isa Hasso. You've been with us from Qamishlo. Thanks a lot for joining us. Well, our dear viewers, that's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.